dive in Tiger Beach, Bahamas. This is what it looks like to enter that world. Right here, one of my dive buddies is surrounded by Caribbean reef sharks, by lemon sharks, and this is what a healthy ecosystem looks like, teeming with biodiversity and with sharks everywhere in crystal clear marine habitat. And so I became a National Geographic Explorer last year when I received my first research grant, sorry, my first education grant from them. And as you can see in this group photo, there's former Nat Geo explorers, there's future Nat Geo explorers, current. And if you look to the bottom corner, you'll see the Brazilian land shark. That's me wearing my shark onesie on the day that I accepted my grant with National Geographic. And I also got to get a photo with my idol in the reason I got into marine preservation in the first place, which is Dr. Sylvia Earle. This woman is the Jane Goodall of the oceans. She has done so much for the oceans, and she's absolutely we should be keeping up with Sylvia. Forget about the Kardashians. There should be a reality show called Keeping Up with Sylvia. This woman is in her 80s, and she is still as energetic and charismatic as a hummingbird. She travels all over the world sharing her passion about wildlife, about our marine habitats, and here she is autographing my shark onesie on the day that I received my National Geographic grant. So you can imagine the spark that I received from that. And so I'm going to show you guys what a behind the scenes video looks like as a National Geographic photographer, because everybody thinks we're buttoned up. When people they're like, oh, you fit most overhead compartments and you look like a cinnamon flavored Teddy Graham, because I'm 5'7", I'm Brazilian, I'm out there. But the National Geographic explorer, the conservationist, the modern day photographer, it's changing, it's diverse, it comes from all different backgrounds, and people are used to thinking of like a 6 foot white guy from Missouri, in his 50s as a Nat Geo explorer. It's changing. And so with those changing landscapes, with those changing faces, also comes different personalities. And if you think I'm the most buttoned up person, well, you probably don't think that. But this is what it looks like when a giant oceanic manta ray jumps right next to the boat. This is my reaction.
I would shut it off and leave it there. Right, oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
Yeah, so the theme on that trip became Bro My God, because I was on the boat trying to point out where these giant 40-foot whale sharks are, and then out of nowhere, this was off the coast in Isla Mujeres, Mexico, which is a conservation success story. Out of nowhere, these giant oceanic manta rays started jumping, and one jumped right next to the boat. So as a National Geographic explorer, I love getting close to wildlife. I'm obsessed with getting close to wildlife. This is an olive ridley sea turtle nesting on a remote beach in the Milky Way, dancing behind her. I used a flash for just 1/100th of a second to barely paint her. And the only reason we were using white light at night was because we're on a research permit here in Costa Rica. I've been working on this project the last 3 years, working directly with the biologists. So we don't do anything that's not outside the guidelines, but I wanted to show people what this scene looks like. And it's a very special place. Hundreds of thousands of sea turtles come to nest on this beach with the Milky Way dancing behind them. And then, in some cases, the jaguar feeds on them. So I was about 10 feet away from a wild jaguar as it was feeding on a sea turtle while she was trying to nest. And it's a very unique, very crazy natural history behavior, but it shows us so much about our natural world. Why would hundreds of thousands of sea turtles be coming to synchronize their nesting period all at the same time on a single beach? Why? Because this is a species that is over 100 million years old, and that's a tactic known as the arribada, which is Spanish for arrival, and it was created to overwhelm predators. Think about a time where there were so many predatory birds, jaguars, and sharks in the ocean that sea turtles had to overwhelm them. This is a baseline. This is an idea that explodes Jurassic Park. It is the world that I want to live in. That is the world that I want to be known. So the world was very different, before 200,000 years ago, when we human beings showed up and kind of disrupted everything. But this natural history behavior, this jaguar, this sea turtle, It's a story that became a National Geographic documentary called Jaguar Beach, which was my first film that I directed and starred in for them. And it became a magazine story, and it became the passion that drove my environmental education grant. So remember, I love getting close to wildlife. Here in Costa Rica, you are surrounded by wildlife. I have sloths in my yard, hummingbirds, toucans, scarlet macaws, and if you're lucky, you guys are going to see some monkeys today, because every single day the squirrel monkeys have been showing up, and they might even be running on the railing behind me. So 5 minutes from my house is a dive site where you can dive with a Harlequin clown shrimp. This is a shrimp that fits in your hand and feeds primarily on starfish, keeping it alive, working one limb at a time. It'll keep that starfish alive for up to a month as generations of this Harlequin clown shrimp feed on it. Why? Because some of these individuals mate for life, and they raise generations of Harlequin clown shrimp under the same rock. This was taken in my yard. This is the white-faced capuchin monkey, a mom and baby, again, in my yard. This is the squirrel monkey. This is the one that you guys might get lucky and see today. Now, I said I love getting close to wildlife, but this animal right here is an animal I may never want to get close to again. And this was photographed in my bathroom. Can you guys guess what that is? That is the Brazilian wandering spider. The Brazilian wandering spider is one of the most infamous animals in the arachnid kingdom. Why? Because it's got a bite believed to be so lethal and so painful that it can kill you within 2 hours of injecting you. And it's the female that has the potent venom. And if she bites you, as a guy, like if she were to bite me, I would die with a vicious, yes, vicious, painful erection. So as it goes around our house now, this is called the Viagra Spider. But it was brought over to Central and North America during the explosion of the banana trade and originated from Brazil, where I'm from. So I can attest, everything from Brazil either wants to mate with you, be friends with you, or eat you. This spider proves that theory. So when I was at the University of Florida, I studied wildlife ecology and conservation and film, and I wanted to combine those two tracks. I wanted to combine those two efforts to become a wildlife filmmaker. But it's not enough to tell these stories. It's not enough to just share these photos, these images, these videos, and just put it out there to be a surrogate mother and hope that it does something in the world. I want to raise these stories. I want to do more with these images, and I want to impact people on a deeper level, which again brings us back to today's theme, which is environmental education. So I received my first grant from National Geographic to implement environmental education into the entire public school system of Costa Rica. So that's my project. That's what we're working on right now. We are building the curriculum with all these images, all these photos and videos that I've been gathering over the last few years. And we're making an environmental education curriculum so that every single student in Costa Rica, in the public schools, can be learning about conservation, learning about their imprint in the world, and learning about their wild backyard and how to preserve it. Why? Because I'm a firm believer that when it comes to conservation, preventative measure is key. Everybody wants to react to the fire. The Amazon is burning, Australia is burning, coronavirus. Like, how do we attack these things now that they're on our doorstep? Guess what? Conservation should not be reactive. It should be preventative. And in my opinion, education is the best way to prevent what we are experiencing right now, which is a global pandemic sparked by wet and wildlife markets. It's not just climate change that we have to worry about. It's the actions leading to climate change that have unforeseen consequences, like what we're experiencing right now. So if we all want to be healthy, if we all want to be traveling, if we don't want to be stuck at home, what can we do? We can start giving a damn about our planet, about the creatures that inhabit them. We can start learning about our place in this world because we are of nature. We are not separate from it. So that's why I wanted to make this curriculum. That's why I wanted to empower the next generation with the tools necessary to preserve our beautiful planet. So I got this grant last year from National Geographic, and I should say I'm not an educator, I'm not a teacher, I don't have a background in that, but I saw a problem, I identified it, and I wanted to address it. So I have school teachers, I have writers, I have conservationists on this grant with me that are helping me build this education and that are really the workhorse and power and brains behind this curriculum. So I'm going to show you guys a video right now. They're going to cue it up over at Creative Live. And it was made by me and my best friend and business partner, Brian Magari. And it pretty much outlines what we're doing with this environmental education grant. If you guys want to cue that video up, go ahead and play it.
I think every individual matters. We all have a role to play and can make a difference in our world. Once I started filming animals in their diminishing habitats, the more it made me want to help protect them. I first came to Manuel Antonio, Costa Rica in 2017 with my best friend Felipe. We were here to film a wildlife series for National Geographic. Once that ended and we came back to the States, we always talked about how we felt that we just scraped the surface with Costa Rica, how we wanted to have more of a direct effect for the animals that we had filmed, and how to inspire the next generation of Costa Ricans to protect their natural ecosystems. After brainstorming, we developed a plan. We decided to move to Costa Rica and start working towards implementing a wildlife education curriculum into the public school system and using the videos and stills that we're continuing to collect to add to the visual element for the books and lesson plans. After discussing this for some time, we knew that this is what we had to do, and within a few weeks, we packed all of our gear, and before we knew it, we were heading back to Manuel Antonio. Our first week back, we took a group of local students out to go spinner dolphin and humpback whale watching. It's one of the few places in our oceans where you're almost guaranteed to see both in one day. And people all over the world come here to see these animals, but it was very shocking to find out that most, if not all, the students had never even seen them before. I'll never forget when that first whale breached the surface, those kids lost their minds.
This is where it all begins.
Filmmaking started off as just a hobby, but over the years it's narrowed down to a responsibility. The reasoning we're filming and photographing wildlife and the ecosystems they live in is to educate and empower the next generation to protect our planet, because this is our home.
This is where it all begins.
We only have one.
All right, so you're probably asking yourself, like, why do I need to keep talking, right? Like, I just laid everything out there in a 2.5-minute video, and now you understand why it is that we want to do what we're doing. Again, conservation should be all about preemptive measure. I believe that we should be looking at conservation the same way that some of us look at sex education. Prevention is key. Empower people with the tools necessary. And in this case, education is the most powerful tool in the world when it comes to protecting what you love, when it comes to saving our natural, wild, beautiful planet. Because remember, like, as everybody's talking about, oh my gosh, we found like a thimble drop of water on Mars. Maybe we can have life on Mars. Who wants to be in a Las Vegas desert in the middle of summer at 120 degrees? No one. So why are we excited about looking for life elsewhere? We already found a rock that inhabits life perfectly well. It's got climates, it's got microclimates, it's got the ocean. Sometimes we can have margaritas, and it's a beautiful place. It's right here. It's what we call home. It's our Earth. It's our beautiful planet. So no other day than today, we should be celebrating our Earth, and we should be projecting and sharing how we can preserve it and how we can preserve ourselves. Because conservation, it's not the preservation of life, outside of humans. It's the preservation of humans, because the Earth will be around. It's not a Save the Earth campaign. It's a Save Ourselves campaign, as we're learning. So again, I can't drive that point home enough. Environmental education. And so right here in Costa Rica, I believe that it's the path of least resistance when it comes to environmental education. Why? Because this tiny country that's about 130,000 square miles, 4% of the Earth's biodiversity, roughly the size of West Virginia, is leading the way in conservation. They made a decision back in the 70s that because they were the most deforested, the fastest deforestation rate in the world of any country, they were going to turn that around. So in the 70s, they turned it from deforestation into regenerative, and they became the fastest forested country in the world, and they have profited amazingly. So ecotourism is the #1 economy here in Costa Rica. So when you come and visit this beautiful place, your money directly goes into providing the theory that nature is worth more alive. There's 100% sustainable and renewable energy, and we just banned all single-use plastics throughout the country. So when you go to a grocery store, you don't get plastic bags anymore. There's a few places that still have to come around to that, but they're incredibly conscious of their carbon and environmental footprint. So what better country in the world than this tiny, beautiful country, which is not an island, but is leading the way in environmental parameters. So the next step is education. So I'm obsessed with educating the youth. I'm obsessed with empowering them. That last photo that you saw that was taken in Costa Rica, this photo was taken in Ethiopia, where in 2015, I worked on different forms of environmental education. I teamed up with biologists to educate the local youth on how to build environmental eco lodges that they own and operate. So all the money goes right back into their pockets. And this is a photo of this young girl who I believe is the future Jane Goodall of Humpback Whales. We took these 30 school kids out in the Osa Peninsula. The Osa Peninsula is 2.5% of the Earth's species in 700 square miles. National Geographic called it the most biologically intense place in the world. It is bottleneck between Costa Rica and Panama, but on the Costa Rica side, we took them out to see spinner dolphins and humpback whales, and the kids absolutely lost their mind. Why? Because the humpback whales were exploding out of the ocean. These beautiful creatures go to these shallow waters of Conyo Island to give birth so that the females can keep their calves away from the males that would try to drown the calves so that they can mate with the females. And so there's like dozens of pairs of humpback whales and moms, and then males on the perimeter of the island. And these kids got to witness these animals exploding out of the ocean for the first time, and that clicked. You show somebody something, and right then and there, you have the power to change their minds. And so we showed them these animals, and then we drove them around on the boat and make them pick pieces of plastic out of the ocean. And then the next time I went back for a wedding in the Osa Peninsula, one of the parents of the school kids that went out with us that day was like, because of you, I can't buy single-use plastics, and we can't bring Nutella or anything that has palm oil in it anymore because my daughter says to me, you're cutting down the rainforest of the Jaguar. And I'm like, good. It went off. The kids are teaching the parents. That's the power of environmental education. So one of the major strategies that we're going to be touching on today, and one of my main focuses on this environmental education, is sharks. Sharks, sharks, sharks. Can you guess that I like sharks? Sharks. Why sharks? Because these animals have survived as a species for over 450 million years on our planet. They've outlived the dinosaurs. They are evolutionary drivers. And if you want to know how important sharks are, this is all you have to consider. What would happen if you stopped cleaning your house for an entire year? Imagine you don't vacuum, you don't dust, you don't do the dishes, you don't take out the garbage. What would happen? Disease would spread. You would be living in filth. So why are sharks important? Because there's over 500 different species of sharks. Again, they've been on the planet for 450 million years. And their job as apex predators is to remove the dying, the dead, and the dumb. Sharks are there for a specific reason. This is the great white shark. And if you don't have sharks, you have an ecosystem, an ocean, entirely ridden with disease and bacteria. They are the vacuum cleaners of the ocean. Why is that important for us? Because half of the world's oxygen comes from the ocean. Half of the world's population depends on the ocean for their daily food source. So if you don't have the vacuum cleaners, you don't have a clean ecosystem. And so this is, again, that great hammerhead shark that you saw earlier. And what these beautiful creatures do and what the kids are learning about is natural history, right? So these giant great hammerheads, they scan the ocean floor with that like metal detector. It's called a cephalofoil is what the head is called. And they have sensory organs called ampullae of Lorenzini spread across their face. And what that allows the great hammerhead to do is detect the electrical currents of a heartbeat. So when they're looking for stingrays that bury themselves in the sand, when they're looking for fish, the stingrays try to hide and keep their heart rate down. Better predators make better prey. And so this is a photo that my friend took. This is a great hammerhead at the surface chasing an eagle ray, and then the eagle ray have developed the ability to launch themselves out of the ocean to try and get away from the sharks. Remember, better predators make better prey. And so this is an action shot of what some call Patches, Spots, Pocahontas. It doesn't matter. She's got 1.5 million names, but she is one of the most charismatic creatures in the Bahamas. And it's also important that as kids are learning about the natural history of these animals, they're also learning about the value of these animals. So this individual shark sparked my story for National Geographic on sharks called Worth More Alive. Why? Because this individual shark, in her lifetime of over 30 years, she can drive millions of dollars of ecotourism from people wanting to come and photograph her and see her because she's world famous. If you were to fin this beautiful animal, you would get $500 for her fins on the market. Why is finning a problem? Because it's driving 100 million sharks a year to their death. But this beautiful shark is there for these rays. This next shark is the shortfin Mako shark. It's the fastest shark in the ocean. It can swim at over 50 miles an hour. It's like a torpedo with teeth. Giant pelagic eyes allow it to dive deep down into the twilight zone where they're hunting for their food, and they have this mouth covered in sharp teeth, conical nose, and again, over 50 miles an hour. Torpedo with teeth. This is the fastest fish in our ocean. This is my favorite shark in the world. And as you can see, this is me diving with it off the coast of Baja. We went out there with Regina Domingo and the Cowie Project, who is doing amazing work off the coast of Baja, again, furthering that drive of Worth More Alive, taking people to see these animals and creating a value around their lives rather than exploiting them, rather than fishing them. So that giant tail is what allows them to cut through the water like a speedboat, but it's also what's driving them and blue sharks into long lines. And so when I dove off the coast of Baja with Regina Domingo, with the Cowie Project, it was to create some images. Sorry, you guys might hear dolphins. Dolphins, where's my head out right now? It's clearly in the ocean. So you guys might hear dogs, you might hear cars. Go with it, all right? This is Costa Rica. So this is a shark that's on a long line. It was the first blue shark, and the first Mako I saw was unfortunately on a long line, so that this can happen. This is a finning operation off the coast of Baja, and over 6 species are represented in this photo, 3 of which are endangered, and this is happening every single day. Why? Again, for the shark finning operation. All so that those fins can go to Asia and they can end up in soup, which is only consumed by the high class, but now is trickling down to the middle class. And the shark fin doesn't even provide nutrition. It's only for the texture that they're going after these fins. So it's not just Asia's fault. Central America, South America, and the United States and Canada are 100% to blame. So many people in conservation efforts right now, they want to blame China, they want to blame Asia. Guess what? If you're living in the United States, we are just as responsible. We are one of the major exporters of shark fins, and we have all these insane laws that allow us to get away with this. Like, you have to bring the shark in whole, or, you know, shark finning is banned, but shark finning exports is legal. Yeah, a shark fin ban did not just pass in Florida as recently as a month ago. So it's not just Asia, it's the United States and Canada that is just as equally to blame. And not just that, but again, it's actions leading to climate change, like sea level temperature rise. So I took this photo off the coast of French Polynesia, where they're experiencing 65% coral bleaching. This is a lone lemon shark trying to make its way through a bleached colony. Remember when I said earlier that the ocean is responsible for half of our oxygen? If we keep going the way we're going through overfishing, exploitation, and sea temperature rise, That's half of the world's oxygen that we're losing out on. And they're overfishing animals so much along these coastlines where they should be nursing, where they should be mating and giving birth, that pups are literally washing up on the coastline. And they're targeting the juveniles. So through targeting pregnant, larger female sharks, they're not just taking one shark, but they're taking between 15 and 20. And then they're finding where the nursery sites are and taking the juveniles. There are about 9 species of hammerheads right now, all of which might go extinct in our lifetime if we don't do something about it. Not just our lifetime, but within the next 20 years. So again, this all comes back to environmental education. It comes back to educating school kids, the next generation, that you shouldn't fear these animals because only 5 people a year die from shark accidents. We are again killing over 100 million sharks a year. And as you can see, it is completely safe, completely possible to be in the water with these animals when you know what you're doing. And we have to draw them in. So many times when we're trying to film sharks, this is a 16-foot tiger shark off the coast of Bahamas coming in and investigating my dive buddy Corey. We have to be looking away because as soon as you make eye contact with the shark, they want to swim away. They don't, like, predators treat predators like predators. They treat prey like prey. So people ask me all the time, what's the #1 shark deterrent? Is it a spray? Is it a certain kind of Febreze? Like, is it a dance that you do to ward off the sharks? No, it's making eye contact. As soon as you make eye contact with this animal, it leaves the situation. So you are so much more likely to die from heart disease, cancer, stroke than you are from a shark attack. Yet why are we so fearful of these animals? A lot of that has to do with pop culture. It has to do with Jaws. It has to do with the perception that these animals are mindless man-eaters. But again, remember, we are killing over 100 million. Sharks are only responsible for 5 deaths a year. You have a 1 in almost 4 million chance in a lifetime to die from these animals. So really, the film shouldn't have been Jaws. It should have been called Snacks, because type 2 diabetes and high cholesterol, that's what's killing us. That's what's responsible for way more deaths around the world than sharks. So through this program, I'm teaming up with Sharks for Kids. It's this amazing NGO run by Duncan and Jillian Breakmeyer over in Bimini, and they are taking kids to see these animals, starting off with rays and small nurse sharks. And as you can see, this young girl was totally fearful to get in the water for the first time with sharks. So Jillian took her hand and she took her into the ocean and she showed her her very first shark. And look at that reaction, like smile from ear to ear. And what's amazing is that these kids are growing up and starting their own ecotourism opportunity. So by learning about these animals, we're not just dispelling the fear, the unnecessary fear of these animals, we're also creating business opportunities. Because remember, I told you about that great hammerhead. She can drive millions of dollars of ecotourism. I told you about how you'd only get $500 for her fins. What is the reasonable route? These kids can put money in their pockets by choosing to lift up nature, to live alongside it, and to get creative with jobs. So through this environmental education program, I'm not saying that everybody has to be a biologist or a photographer or filmmaker, but if you understand the importance of nature, then there's opportunities all around you. Speaking of opportunities, the next segue is a documentary that I made with one of my best friends in the world called The River and the Wall. And again, we're using all the content that we made from this documentary, along with another project that we're working on right now to educate the local kids in Texas. Yes, Texas. So I've got a project in Costa Rica, I've got a project in the Bahamas, and I've got a project in Texas. So Ben Masters is an amazing documentary filmmaker. This is his project. We are just helping out through some of the images, but The River and the Wall is available right now on iTunes. It's a documentary where we wanted to talk about the ecological implications of a physical border wall, something that nobody was talking about. And I took this photo on a beautiful sunset right in the middle of a chilly Rio Grande afternoon. And this is the Rio Grande River, which runs alongside the US and Mexico. On one side is the US, on the other side is Mexico, and in between is nature's border, the Rio Grande. So if you guys want to play the video right now, which is the trailer for for the river and the wall.
Rather than talking about putting up a fence, why don't we work out some recognition of our mutual problems, make it possible for them to come here legally with a work permit, and open the border both ways?
We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation
of law. We have a responsibility to secure our borders.
Can't have a situation without any kind of mechanism to control it.
I voted numerous times to build a barrier.
On day one, we will begin working on a tall, powerful, beautiful southern border wall.
We are embarking on a 1,200-mile journey from El Paso to the Gulf of Mexico to try and understand where exactly a wall would go and what effects it would have.
I think there's people over on that bank.
I talked to my parents about it. They said that was them 30 years ago.
Any conversation on immigration has to begin with operational control of our border.
Is the border on the river, or is the border at the wall?
Without the water, we can't operate. They are taking their land away from them.
You've got almost 3,000 acres of land that is going to be ceded to Mexico.
I don't see how you could build a border wall that's more difficult to cross through than this landscape.
The answer is not going to be walls. It is ensuring that our immigration laws match our reality.
And way more unites us than divides us.
I felt honored to see the area before, but also saddened it may soon change.
We were afraid and alarmed, and we felt that feeling for such a small instant. And to realize that those people feel that for years and years made me realize there's a bigger issue than the actual crossing into the country.
It looks scalable.
You guys are so okay. Remember when I told you earlier that monkeys might show up? Remember that I told you that we live in Mother Nature's birth canal? We are in just this like happy accident of a jungle known as Costa Rica that crashes into the ocean. Guess what? We just had a monkey show up. Wait, I don't believe in feeding wildlife. I don't believe in wildlife selfies. So I'm gonna try to coax him over with the mating call. Oh, here he comes. All right, here we go. So this is a wild Brian McGarry. Remember, I kept bringing up Brian McGarry. He took all those images of the dolphins, the whales, that voice that you heard from earlier in the educational video. So he's my best friend, my business partner. We started Comfort Theory together, and he's also my roommate.
We do everything together.
We do everything together. But yeah, so I'm talking to a bunch of people on the other side about conservation filmmaking, environmental education, and you're holding a package of cured meat.
Making pizza.
We're making pizza. I'm a vegetarian. He's a flexitarian. A flexitarian is when you smell like cabbage and you do my dishes. I'm kidding. He doesn't do my dishes. You want to say hi to people?
Hello, everyone.
Do you have a message about conservation?
We're
getting close.
There's essentially everyone has their own backyard, and we all have issues and areas surrounding where we live. So even if you think you can't make an impact, just look around you. There's always something we can all do.
Oh, beautiful. All right.
Have fun. Enjoy Felipe.
Get that cured meat out of here. Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me, devil. Get that cured meat away from me. The power of vegetarian compels you. That's me splashing juice at him. Okay, Super ADD, where were we? So this is Jay. This is Jay Clayburgh, who's in the film, who comes from this amazing legacy of conservationists in Texas. And so The River and the Wall, again, is available to rent or purchase on iTunes. If you go over to iTunes, you can rent it from there or buy it. I suggest you buy it so I get a little bit more dough in my pocket. But, no pressure. Do whatever you want. Just support. We filmmakers got to support each other. So it's available on iTunes. We did the entire length of the Rio Grande River along Texas and Mexico by mountain bike, by canoe, and by horseback. And I rode a horse for the very first time in my life. It was like a backcountry vasectomy. I don't recommend, if you're going to ride a horse for the first time, you do 25 miles in the Texas wilderness. Your eggs are going to be scrambled. I'll leave it at that. So anyways, this is Jay. We were traveling through the Big Bend here, and Texas is an amazingly wild, beautiful place, primed for conservation stories. So again, we're using all these images that we took from the river and the wall. This is Ben Masters, the director, and the director of the new project that we're working on right now called Deep in the Heart of Texas. And so all of these images, all of these videos, all of these stories, I mean, the youth are so advanced right now. They can handle topics and conversations that I could have never. I didn't know what single-use plastics was when I was a kid. I didn't know what carbon emissions were. But like, kids right now are so aware. They're so much more mature. I believe they can handle stories like immigration, like conservation, like how a physical wall would disrupt nature, how there might be some other options that we want to consider, especially in a water crisis. We're talking about, blocking people's water rights, whatever, without getting too political. But this is me here at sunrise along the Rio Grande. It's also the celebration of nature. What you're giving up when you're like ceding all this land to Mexico is you're giving up a culture, you're giving up a way of life, you're giving up opportunities. And most people are not in the United States illegally by crossing. I mean, they're using ports of entry, and most people are overstaying their visas. So over 70% of people in the United States illegally are there because of overstaying their visas. So if you really want to build a wall, build one high enough to keep planes out. That's how you would really address the issue, in my opinion. But what do I know? I just spent 2 years on a documentary talking about immigration and literally physically going alongside the border, setting trap cameras and, talking to people on both sides. But that's just my opinion. So this has been here. As you can see, we're in a box canyon right now, like we just got out of it. And it is slush country USA. This was a absolute physical endurance. So it was an adventure documentary along with a political and conservation one. And our bikes got so heavy that they were riding us at one point. Like, we physically could not pedal. This was my bike, caked by mud, caked by slush. And when all got so bad that we didn't think we could make the next corner, someone along the way would just end up with trail magic. This is our producer, Hillary, an amazing producer, and she's got a bottle of bourbon and a dog. What lifts your spirits up more than carrying bikes for 18 hours in a day than bourbon and dogs? I don't know. If you got a better solution, I'm all ears. So we got to meet these people along the way. We got to hear their stories. This is a lady that married a Mexican. She owns this ranch in Texas, and we got to meet some characters. We got to hear some backstories, and I think that's ultimately what it's about. I understand that people want solutions, and I understand that they want answers, but I don't think disrupting the entire environment of an area addresses the needs of most people. That's just my opinion. And regardless of what side of the fence you're on, I think we need to continue the conversation. I think we shouldn't be as divisive as we are. And again, bringing this back to environmental education, the way we're leveraging these media assets is talking to kids about it, having conversations with them, teaching them that if they have disagreements, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to have disagreements as long as we work something out that works for all of us. So I got to meet wonderful people, again, business owners along the way. And the reason why this story was so important to me is because my name is Felipe DeAndrade, not the most Caucasian name. I'm not going to be the mayor of Caucasiaville. I'm not going to be the poster child for Gap or Banana Republic. Sorry, that's just a Caucasian joke. And I was born in Brazil. I lived there until I was almost 6 years old. And we immigrated to the United States, and we were forced into overstaying our visas. My mom raised us by herself, and my dad left us when I was 6 years old, went back to Brazil, and took our passports, took our birth certificates, took everything. We were literally stranded on the American side of the fence, which is what you're seeing in this photo right here. And all this rhetoric, all this talk about, like immigrants are rapists, they're murderers, they're stealers, like you don't want them here. Like, I felt that that was a personal attack because I know my family. I know, a lot of other immigrants, and they are hardworking, beautiful people that are contributing. When we became citizens, it took us 14 years to get our citizenship. When we became citizens, my mom became a nurse at the Veterans Hospital because she wanted to give back to the veterans that gave so much to us. And that is such a similar immigrant story to so many other ones that I know. And I feel a personal responsibility as a citizen of the United States of America to inject environmental education, conservation. I ask myself all the time, how can I make the world a better place, not just for myself, but for those around me? And that's what you get when you have a hard background, when you have to fight and work for everything you have. So again, it's having these conversations with students, with kids that can identify with people that, you know, are of the same background as me. And that's why I wanted to be a part of this documentary and to share that story. And this is a photo of me and my mom at the 2015 Sun Valley Film Festival when I won the ability to work with National Geographic at the Wild to Inspire Film Festival. And she taught me everything I know about fear. She taught me everything I know about challenging my fears, about not being a product of your environment, about wanting more for yourself and going after it and turning your dreams into a plan. If you have dreams and they stick around long enough, turn them into plans, turn them into goals. So I get all of that from her. And when I say that she taught me a lot about fear, again, I grew up in, you know, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, the most infamous ghetto in the world. First family trips were to the Amazon, where this is the first animal I feared, the jaguar. This animal is the third largest cat in the world. It has the most powerful bite force of any cat in the world. And remember, when I told you guys that my first National Geographic special was on the jaguar, how appropriate is it that the very first thing I feared in life became my passion, became my favorite animal, and drove the mission of my environmental education grant. A beautiful thing happens when you challenge your fears. You don't have to be a conservation filmmaker. You don't have to be a naturalist or environmentalist. If you're a filmmaker, photographer, creative storyteller, writer, whatever, on the other side, challenge your fears. Don't run away from them. Write them down. Ask them why you feel attacked by your fears. And I promise you a beautiful thing will happen. And being lucky enough to be raised by a single mother, I can tell you, not even this jaguar, not a shark, not a snake, nothing in the world drives more fear to me than a single mother. Because if you've ever been hit in the head by a shoe at 40 miles an hour, and stop it eating the mashed potatoes. She calls them mashed potatoes. Felipe's, stop it with the mashed potatoes. She makes everything plural. There's only one of me. Why does she call me Felipe's? Felipe sounds like something you come back from Cabo spring break with. And then I get a shoe to the face. So this woman taught me everything I knew about fear, taught me everything I knew about purpose. And that's why I wrote this environmental education grant. That's why we're using all these tools and assets to drive a deeper mission. And if you guys want to follow along, if you want to write to me on Instagram and ask how you can get involved in this environmental education grant, and then you can see the link below is to my National Geographic Wildlife Series, natgeo.com/untamed, and then The River and the Wall, which is now available on iTunes. And I've been talking for probably way longer than I need to be. So let's have Mother Goose time. Let's open it up for a discussion.
Felipe, I have the biggest smile on my face, and the way you talk about your mom, I got to meet her someday. I thank you for the incredible work that you do, and I want to give some shout outs to people who are tuning in from all over the world, from Australia to different parts of the U.S. and and Alberta, Canada. So you were just talking about fear, and Terry from on Facebook had asked earlier from Canada, have you ever been afraid for your life? And maybe that's not the sort of thinking about the jaguars when you were a kid, but like in a specific situation that you could share with us.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you got to remember, I'm a wildlife filmmaker. Like, I work with sharks, I work with snakes, I work with jaguars, with lions. I'm always afraid. Do you know what makes me fearful the most? And do you know, like, the animal that makes me the most afraid? human beings. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I get this question all the time. Like, you work with animals. Like, have you ever been afraid for your life? Have you ever been in danger? Yes, I lived in New York City for 2 years. I got bit by a homeless guy. I immediately got checked the next day. Nothing against homeless people or nothing against anybody that likes to bite strangers. But I feared for my life that day. You are more likely to get bit by a random person on a New York City subway than you are diving with a shark. So human beings scare the hell out of me. Have I ever been fearful in my life working with an animal? No. Always educate myself on what the situation is, on what the environment is, on what the natural history is. And I'm not going to lie, like, that's not to say that sometimes I don't get the jitters or sometimes that, something doesn't surprise me and catch me off guard. But fear, no, I am obsessed with the natural world. And it's okay to have these fears as long as you challenge them. But human beings, that is the deadliest animal on our planet.
I think that's the best answer I've ever heard to that question. I do have some questions coming in. If you are tuning in right now on creativelive.com/TV, you can click on the chat icon, and that's where we can grab some questions that you have for Felipe. I want to go back to the education aspect, and we have a question from Grady, who's in Vancouver, BC.
What up, Grady?
And Grady wants to know, when sharing with kids, what medium do they seem to be most interested in right now? And so maybe you can go into some of the specifics about where the resources that you're creating can be found by parents, adults, and the like.
That's a great question. So everything that we're doing right now is digital. We are making a landing page with the support of National Geographic, where when we create the curriculum and we create the lesson plans, it's all going to be available online. So students and teachers will have a login and they'll have access to all of that information. Why? Two main reasons. One, environmental footprint. We don't want to print paper. We don't want to print pages. We don't want to print any more books than we need to. And so by making the lesson plan digital, as the lessons evolve, so can the content, and we don't have to print anything. We don't have to physically make anything. So that makes us feel really good. Number two, this is the ultimate goal. We do not want to stop in Costa Rica. We want to make it an open source system, and we want to make it available to the rest of the world. So by starting and sustaining it on a digital platform, then that means that when we eventually do it, where you're from in Vancouver, right? Where people are watching from, Albania or Australia or New Zealand or Brazil, like, we can make this thing digital and available to the rest of the world if we keep it digital. And so kids are reacting most on educational platforms provided by National Geographic. They have some options right now, but everything is going to be available online.
Awesome. And such a great way to approach it, especially digitally, the ability for people to get that from wherever they are. And kids are all about digital right now. Another question that came in from creativelive.com/TV, how can we get involved in our own communities? How can we educate ourselves? What do you recommend specifically for people to do locally in addition to globally?
Brian, you chimed in on that earlier. Somebody wants to know, how can you get involved locally with conservation? I'm assuming, right, with conservation or with filmmaking?
Conservation.
Okay. I mean, you work with like sandy and beach cleanups all the time.
Well, I would say, come in closer. I would say go to local universities. So there's biologists doing conservation work everywhere. Like, when we went to the University of Florida and the surrounding 150-mile radius, there was a biologist doing work from sea turtles on one side of the coast to dolphins on the other. There's so much work going on locally, and really a lot of these biologists need help. So if you're interested in it, you should just reach out to try to find biologists in their area and just reach out and try to help.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Always resources available, and the scientists, they could use your skill set. If you're a writer, if you're a photographer, if you're a filmmaker, like, team up. Like collaborations are the best way to advance everybody's mission.
I think that's such an important point. I think we often, think that whether it's, researchers or other people out there who are already doing things like that, they already have photographers and filmmakers that they're working with. And that's absolutely not the case. And so to, like you said, partner, and there's already momentum going with a project. So that's awesome advice. I want to give a shout out to Gabrielle Kings, who is tuning in from New Mexico and says, "You are my role model. Thank you for everything you do." She wants to know where she can buy the t-shirt that you have on. She's obsessed with sharks.
This one, actually, remember that photo of the great Hammerhead and then the cinematographer in the bottom corner? That's Jim Abernathy, one of my best friends, an amazing shark conservationist. This shirt this is like the only shirt that I wear. Like, I literally smell like pizza grease, regret, and beets like every single day of my life, because who's got time to change their shirt? Why am I telling you this information? You don't need to know. I don't know why, but you can get it from Jim Abernathy. Look at Jim Abernathy on Instagram, and I think he's got his website available on there where he sells this. But I bought it from his shop in Florida, but I think he sells them online.
There you go, Gabrielle. How can we support you? How can we support your efforts? And really, if people are looking to support.
Oh, glad you asked. I'm going to put my Venmo up right now. No. So that's a great question. How can you support me? Okay. If you follow me on Instagram, if we are friends on any platforms, very, very, very soon, and I mean, like, we already have all the media assets and digital assets. I can't say exactly what it is right now, but we are launching a major campaign around an effort to create a change within wildlife management in the United States. And again, I can't say exactly what it is right now because this is kind of like an undercover story. I've been on it for the last 2 years. It's hypersensitive information, and I need to be careful about how I roll things out. But if you follow me on Instagram, I promise that very soon I will need your help. I will need your signature and digital petitions. I will need you to share, redistribute videos, content, talk about this issue as much as possible, because it's an issue that affects all of us, is happening right underneath our noses, and is attacking our environmental resources. So I wish I could say more. Thank you for asking. Like, that means the world, but very soon, I'm going to need your help. So again, follow me on Instagram, stay connected with me, and I'll let you know how I need your help very soon on this campaign that we are launching.
Well, thank you. And that's a wonderful tease and letting us know what to look out for. I think a lot of times campaigns come about, petitions come about, and we think like, oh, somebody else is going to sign that. Like, that's an opportunity to actually get involved and make a difference. Truly look forward to seeing what that is that you are about to launch. I want to make sure that everybody also knows how to watch Untamed. Tell us about the show. Tell us about how that started and what is Untamed.
Great question. Okay, so if you want to see Untamed, it's super easy. Just go to natgeo.com/untamed. And it's a landing page for a lot of assets that we created, a series called Under the Lights that has over 20 million views on National Geographic, access to the Jaguar film, which is available on iTunes right now, as well as digital pieces from Untamed. So Untamed started because I won a wildlife filmmaking competition with National Geographic. I got the opportunity to go to Africa for like 5 weeks almost. I told them to buy me a one-way ticket, and I came back in over 4 months. And then me, Brian, and another business partner at the time, we had just recently started Comfort Theory, and we were looking for productions. We were looking to stay engaged in conservation after my Africa experience. And so we pitched Untamed to National Geographic. And at the same time, literally, like, they were like, hey, we want to have you in DC. We have a couple of like project opportunities. And we're like, perfect, because we have an idea that we want to share with you. And we pitched them the exact same idea. Literally, I just bought a mambulance. I call it a mambulance because Brian and I found a ambulance available in Florida that we bought, reconverted into like a camper home situation. And I think we both had girlfriends at the time. And when we told them that we were buying a ambulance together and like traveling the country, they were like, oh, so this is how you decide to come out of the closet? Like, we're not together in that way. But, you know, when you buy a ambulance, people suspect that. Understandably so. And so we pitched National Geographic the idea of Untamed. They called it Felipe's Wild America, which sounds like I sell tacos out of the back of the ambulance. But then we did season 1 in the States and season 2 in Costa Rica. And so the idea really came about after that Africa experience and just wanting to keep the energy and the flow and the work going with Nat Geo.
Amazing. Well, I was watching some episodes today, and the work that you put out in the world is just, it's really phenomenal. And I want to thank you on behalf of our Creative Live community and everybody else out there for joining us today and educating us. And we certainly look forward to supporting you and all of your efforts and being entertained by you, because, you know, what's life if you are not entertained, right?
Absolutely. It's all we got right now.
How many different animal noises can you make?
And what do I have, like 10 seconds? Okay, here we go. What's another one? Oh, lion contact call. Except it can be heard from 4 miles away. Oh, and howler monkey.
Pretty incredible. Once again,
Wild
thank
Brian.
you. Say that again.
And then I got one more animal call. A wild Brian. Hey, did you drink my tequila? That's what a wild Brian sounds like. The answer is yes. Yes, I did.
Well, there you go, everyone. Thank you so much. I look forward to, again, watching more episodes of Untamed. We have people who are putting in, your energy is amazing, lots of smiley faces, hearts, laughs, all of that coming in. So we're just so grateful for you to have joined us all the way from Costa Rica.
Thank you. That means a lot. And I just want to say one last thing. Is a creative platform. And so I'm sure a lot of photographers, filmmakers, writers are on the other side of this. Look, I am living proof. I am living example that if you want to do what you want to do in this world, nobody can keep you from doing that. I grew up dirt poor, an illegal immigrant, like with seemingly no options. And I glowed up. I am living my version of my best life, and that's getting to travel the world and tell conservation stories. So the only person keeping you from doing what you want to do is you. All that matters is that you get one yes. Don't worry about the 1,000,000 no's that are going to come your way when you chase your dream. Just stay on your path. Just chop up those no's like little logs and throw them in the fire that burns inside of you. Because you have one life and nobody ever looked back on their life and wish they did more of what other people told them to do. So go after your dreams, make it happen, chase passion, because we need that more than ever right now. Go after it, Creative Live.
Amen. We've got, again, comments coming in. Let's take care of our world. Happy Earth Day. You're so inspirational. I truly appreciate your time. And we will be following you, everybody. Make sure you're following Felipe. We've got the links in the chats. And have a beautiful rest of your Earth Day, Felipe. And thank you again. Thank you. Take care, everyone.